There comes a moment when silence turns sharp, when the smile fades, the breath shortens, and the eyes, those kind watching eyes, go cold. Not from hate, from exhaustion. I've seen it in temples, in cities, in my own students. The empath doesn't scream, they snap, and when they do, it's not loud, it's clean, like a sword pulled quietly from its sheath. Empaths don't break because they're weak. They break because they've held too much for too long. Pain that wasn't theirs, responsibility that never belonged to them. In Shaolin, we call this a disturbance of the inner temple, a sacred space flooded by the noise of the world. And if that flood isn't stopped, it drowns the spirit. But here's what most never understand. That snapping point, it's not a collapse, it's a rite of passage, the beginning of power, not the end of peace. In this teaching, I will walk you through the unseen path of the empath, the hidden reasons behind their pain, the moment their spirit fractures and what is truly born from that fracture. You will understand why kindness must be guided by discipline, why boundaries are not walls but gates, and why stillness is not silence, it is strength. These are not theories, these are truths forged in fire, lived, tested, and embodied by those who walk the Shaolin path. Stay until the end, not for me, for the part of you that's tired of carrying everything, for the part of you that knows it's time to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to heal. Welcome to Shaolin Soulfire. I am Shi Heng. If you are ready to return to your center, subscribe now. The training begins. There's a wound that doesn't bleed, and because it doesn't bleed, no one sees it, but it's there just beneath the skin of the spirit. Not created in one moment, but over many, tiny moments. Drops of betrayal, drops of silence, drops of being too kind when your chest was already collapsing. I once trained with a monk who never raised his voice, always smiling, always calm. But I remember the day he broke. Not with violence, but with stillness, so deep it silenced the entire hall. We thought he had reached enlightenment, but later he told me something I never forgot. He said, I stopped speaking because no one ever asked how I was. I smiled because no one could handle my truth. I became peaceful to survive. And that's the danger. When the soul starts adapting to pain instead of healing from it, the smile becomes a mask, the silence becomes armor, and behind it, the shadow grows. In Shaolin, we don't fear darkness, but we study it because what is repressed doesn't disappear. It learns to wait, waits in the muscles, in the posture, in the breath you never release. And when the moment comes, when the body can no longer contain the emotion, it surfaces like a fire beneath still water. And no one understands where it came from. But you always knew. That's why we train, not to look peaceful, but to become clear, to catch the drops before they turn to storms, to speak while our voice is still gentle, to express before our heart turns silent. This is the hidden work, the real discipline, not in forms or movements, but in honesty, in watching the first drop fall and choosing not to pretend it isn't rain. Compassion is a fire. It can warm or it can burn you alive. Most people don't see the difference until it's too late, especially those who feel deeply. The ones who can sense a shift in someone's tone, carry another's pain just by walking into a room. These people give endlessly, but what they don't realize is that giving without return isn't kindness, it's depletion. In the temple, we were taught to serve, but with discipline. Not every hand must be held. Not every suffering must be absorbed. A monk who kneels for every crying soul forgets to rise for his own practice. And this is where the empath begins to break. Slowly, they pour from a vessel they've never refilled. They say yes when their chest is screaming no. They call it compassion, but deep down it's avoidance. Avoiding conflict, avoiding guilt, avoiding the discomfort of choosing themselves. But true compassion is not soft. It has spine. It knows when to step in and when to step back. In the old text, there's a line. The healer must be stronger than the wound. That strength doesn't come from emotion. It comes from clarity, from rootedness, from the discipline to return to center again and again, no matter who is pulling at your energy. When you forget this, your kindness becomes a slow collapse, a quiet erosion of spirit, until one day you snap, not because you are cruel, but because you have nothing left to give. That snap is not failure. It's a signal, a call back to the root, the breath, the boundary, the sacred space inside that says, I am not here to be consumed. I am here to stay awake. There's a silence that follows the breaking, not empty, not defeated, but clear, like a bell after it's struck. When the empath finally reaches their edge, it's not a violent eruption. It's more like shedding skin. Something old falls away, not innocence but illusion. The illusion that being good means being quiet, that peace means being agreeable, that love requires self-erasure. That's what dies. And in its place, something older rises, a knowing, one that has nothing to prove and nothing to protect. This is not the birth of rage, it's the return of truth, a truth that was buried under years of politeness and self-sacrifice. In the old Shaolin teachings, there's a saying, when the mask cracks, the face begins. The moment of snapping is not weakness, it's a turning point. The energy that was once scattered outward now begins to collect inward, slowly, strongly, without apology. You see, many think peace is passive, but real peace has weight. It doesn't bend to make others comfortable. It doesn't smile to keep the room calm. It stands, it breathes, it sees clearly. This is the transformation from a peacekeeper to a peaceholder, from someone who absorbs pain to someone who reflects truth. And it's not loud. It doesn't need to be. The one who has returned to center no longer begs to be understood. They walk with stillness because they've faced their storm. They give with care because they've touched their own limit. And from that breaking point, they begin again, not as someone trying to be enough for others, but as someone who remembers they were always whole. They just stopped pretending otherwise. Stillness is often misunderstood. People see someone sitting quietly and assume they feel nothing, but numbness is not stillness. It's shutdown. It's the body locking itself away because it doesn't know how to stay open without being overwhelmed. True stillness is something else entirely. In the Shaolin way, stillness is alive, watchful, present, like the surface of a lake that reflects everything but swallows nothing. To be still doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you feel deeply without becoming the feeling. You notice the anger, but you don't tighten around it. You witness the sorrow, but you don't collapse into it. This is discipline, not the forced kind that stiffens your body, but the inner discipline of staying awake, of breathing through the emotion instead of reacting from it. There's a moment every empath knows, when someone's energy floods the room and your chest tightens without warning. That moment decides everything. If you're numb, you absorb it unconsciously. If you're reactive, you lash out or retreat. But if you're still truly still, you notice it. You feel the pull, and you remain unmoved. That's not detachment, that's mastery. In ancient training halls, students would stand for hours in still postures, not to look disciplined, but to become anchored, to remain rooted when the body aches, the mind wanders, or tension rises. Because if you can't hold still in the storm holds you. For the empath, this is the gate, not shutting down, not becoming emotionless, but cultivating the strength to stand open and stay centered, to say, yes, I feel it all, and still I choose peace. This is the stillness that doesn't break, because it's not silence, it's presence. There's a quiet temptation in always helping others. It feels noble, it feels loving, and for the empath, it feels like purpose. But if you look closely, you will see something else beneath it, a subtle escape, a way to avoid your own inner world by focusing on someone else's. Many give because they don't know how to sit with what they're carrying. They soothe others while their own wounds remain untouched. They say, how can I heal you, but never stop to ask, what in me is still bleeding? The ancient path never begins outside. It starts within. In the temples, students weren't allowed to teach others until they had faced themselves. The practice was simple: silence, breath, stillness, not to become holy, to become honest. Because when you stop running toward other people's fires, you begin to see your own smoke. What am I avoiding? What truth am I afraid to feel? What part of me have I left behind while trying to save everyone else? This is where real strength lives, not in rescuing, but in returning again and again to your own breath, to your own body, to your own center. Mastery is not about fixing, it's about presence. It's when you can sit in your own pain without needing to distract from it. When you can meet your own fear without pushing it onto someone else. When you can hold your own energy and not scatter it across 1,000 needs that were never yours to carry. You don't serve the world by abandoning yourself. You serve it by becoming whole, so that when you do offer help, it comes from clarity, not compulsion, from fullness, not lack, and from love that includes you, not just everyone else. There's a lesson that doesn't come with ease. It breaks slowly into the heart after years of saying yes, smiling gently, and feeling the quiet sting of self-betrayal. The lesson is this: being kind to others does not mean being dishonest with yourself. Too many confuse boundaries with rejection, as if saying no means you don't care, as if protecting your energy is selfish. But in truth, the opposite is more dangerous. The one who says yes to everything slowly disappears. In the Shaolin tradition, alignment matters more than appearance. A straight spine, a steady breath, a clear intention. You are not here to be agreeable. You are here to be aligned. A boundary is not a wall. It is a line drawn in awareness. It says, this is where I end and where you begin. It is clarity, not conflict. There was a time in training when one student refused to confront another. Always calm, always yielding. But over time, resentment hardened in his posture. Not in words, but in the body itself. His back tensed, his form weakened, not because he lacked strength, but because he avoided truth. Peace without truth is fragile. It shatters under pressure. True peace has edges. It knows how to say no with gentleness, but with firmness. Because a man who cannot refuse, cannot protect, and a spirit that cannot protect itself cannot serve anything fully. So this is the deeper work, not just opening the heart, but guarding it with wisdom, not just extending a hand, but knowing when to let go. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be true to yourself. Because the most dangerous loss is not the loss of relationships. It's the slow, quiet loss of your own center. Energy doesn't just vanish. It moves. It listens. It follows where you place your attention. This is the principle of Qi, the subtle force that flows through all things. It's not mystical, it's precise. When you worry about someone, your Qi goes to them. When you ruminate, argue in your mind, or try to fix what's broken outside you, your Qi drains outward. For empaths, this happens constantly. Their awareness is rarely at home. It's out in the world, scanning, absorbing, tending to every shift in the emotional landscape around them. It's generous, but dangerous. Over time, the current weakens, not because they lack energy, but because they never return it to themselves. In Shaolin training, forms aren't just physical, they're energetic. A stance isn't just a shape, it's a vessel for gathering qi. Every breath pulled deep into the belly is a reclaiming. Every rooted step is a declaration. I am here, I am whole, I return to myself. That's the deeper point of the form, not to look graceful, but to become present, not to control the body, but to guide the spirit back inward. The empath who has snapped has scattered their energy for too long. Their breath lives in the past. Their thoughts are with others. Their center is forgotten, but it can be found again. Through conscious breath, through slowness, through the simple act of paying attention, not to others, but to the space inside the chest, the rhythm of the spine, the stillness under the noise. When you gather your qi, you gather your power. And in that gathering, you remember you were never meant to leak into every room. You were meant to radiate from your center, quietly, intentionally, like a flame that feeds itself first, then lights the world. There are deaths that happen without funerals, no weeping, no rituals, just a quiet shift inside. The kind of death where something false finally falls away. When the empath snaps, it isn't the end of love, it's the end of distortion. The version of themselves that smiled through discomfort, gave past their limits, and called it virtue, that part dissolves. It's not cruelty that rises from the ashes, it's clarity. They still feel deeply, that doesn't change. But now the feeling doesn't control them, it doesn't sweep them into guilt or silence or surrender. It flows through, but no longer defines them. In ancient teachings, death is not feared, it's honored. It clears space, it marks the transition from one way of being to another. The one who comes back from the snap is different. Their eyes are steadier, their no is cleaner, not sharp but solid. Softness remains, but it's no longer a defense, it's a choice. They choose when to open, when to listen, when to give, and they do it from alignment, not obligation. This is where discipline enters the heart, not as punishment, but as sacred structure. Feel what you feel, but return to posture. Hold space for others, but stay rooted in breath. This is no longer about being liked, it's about being real. The empath who once dissolved for others now stands, not hardened, not bitter, just aware. And in that awareness, they find a deeper form of love, one that includes themselves, one that does not abandon truth for peace, one that does not call self-erasure compassion. The death is quiet, but the rebirth, it's steady, grounded, and full of power that no longer leaks into emptiness. The empath's journey is not about becoming harder, it's about becoming clearer, not giving less, but giving from a place that is full, steady, and rooted in truth. When you walk the middle path, you no longer sacrifice yourself in the name of peace. You learn to hold both softness and strength in the same breath. Discipline becomes your anchor. Boundaries become your compass. Stillness becomes your shield. And from this grounded space, your compassion doesn't fade. It deepens. It becomes something sustainable, something powerful. Remember this, you are not here to carry everything. You are here to stand in your center, feel what's true, and move from that space with calm eyes and a steady spirit. Thank you for walking this path with us today. If this message spoke to something in you, take a moment now to breathe and return to yourself. Then gently share this journey, like the video, and subscribe to Shaolin Soulfire for more teachings on inner mastery and spiritual strength. The training continues.